I'm Emily, 30, female. I live in a small, quiet town where everyone knows everyone, which I used to think was charming. For the last decade, my entire professional life has been dedicated to being a teacher at Clearview Academy, the local high school. I lived alone, but my students and my colleagues felt like my family. My life was steady, predictable, and I was proud of the work I did. I was promised a promotion, the head of the English department, a role I had earned 10 times over. Instead, I was fired, and the reason why would unravel a web of deceit that threatened to destroy the school I loved. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. 10 years, a full decade, that's how long I had walked the halls of Clearview Academy. I started as a bright-eyed, slightly terrified 20-year-old student teacher. Now, at 30, I was a cornerstone of the English department. My classroom wasn't just a room, it was a sanctuary. The walls were covered in student projects, literary timelines we'd built together, and photos from school plays I'd directed. I knew the name of every student, their siblings, and usually their dog's name too. I wasn't just teaching literature. I was teaching kids how to think, how to be kind, and how to see the world outside their small town bubble. My performance reviews were flawless, exceptional, dedicated, a true asset to Clearview. They said year after year. I ran the debate club, the school newspaper, and the annual poetry slam. I was the one who stayed late to help a student struggling with a college essay, and the one who chaperoned the senior trip every spring. I did it all with a smile because I genuinely loved it. Mr. Thompson, our 52-year-old principal, had been my boss for the last 5 of those years. He was a man who favored sharp suits and even sharper, rehearsed smiles. He was all about optics and metrics. 6 months ago, Mrs. Gable, the head of the English department and my personal mentor, announced her retirement. In her farewell speech, she had publicly thanked me, calling me the future of this department. The next day, Thompson called me into his office. "Emily," he said, steepling his fingers, "Mrs. Gable's retirement leaves a big void, but she and I believe you are the one to fill it. The board just needs to stamp it at the end of the semester. It's a formality. The job is yours." I was ecstatic. Head of department, it wasn't just the small pay raise, it was the recognition. It was the chance to shape the curriculum, to mentor new teachers, to implement all the ideas I'd been carefully noting down for years. For the next 6 months, I worked even harder, if that was possible. I drafted a proposal for a new digital literacy program. I started organizing Mrs. Gable's old files. I was, in my mind, already doing the job. The entire faculty knew it was my role. David, the head of the science department and my closest work friend, had already bought me a new head of English nameplate for my desk as a joke. It felt like the perfect, logical, and deserved next step in a career I had given my life to. The semester ended, grades were submitted, and I waited for the official announcement. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, the first official day of summer break. The subject line was simple, meeting. It was from Mr. Thompson. I assumed it was the official offer, the congratulations and meeting. I put on my best blazer, my hands buzzing with nervous excitement. I walked through the quiet, empty halls of the school. It felt different in the summer, peaceful. Karen, the school secretary and a quiet woman of 48 who had seen everything, gave me a look I couldn't quite decipher as I signed in. It wasn't her usual warm smile, it was tight, laced with pity. I brushed it off. "Emily, come in. Sit down," Thompson said, not getting up from his desk. The warm, rehearsed smile was gone. His office, usually bright and welcoming with school trophies, felt cold. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Thompson. I'm looking forward to discussing the new semester," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He cleared his throat and looked down at a single sheet of paper on his desk. "Emily, the school board has decided to go in a different direction." My stomach dropped. A different direction. For the department, I have some great ideas for the curriculum. No, he cut me off, and his eyes, when they finally met mine, were flat and impersonal. "A different direction for your position. Clearview is restructuring its staff to meet new budgetary and performance goals." My mind reeled. "My position, I don't understand. My performance reviews are adequate," he said, the word adequate landing like a slap. "But the board and I feel we need fresh energy, new perspectives. Unfortunately, this means your contract for the upcoming year will not be renewed." I stopped breathing. "Not renewed? You mean I'm fired?" The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "But the promotion, you said the job was mine." He shook his head, a politician's gesture of false sympathy. Circumstances change, Emily. We've decided to hire someone who is a better fit for our new 5-year plan. A recent graduate with a master's in educational administration, very dynamic. A recent graduate. I was sputtering. I have 10 years of experience, my students, my programs. Yes, well, he said, standing up, the universal signal for get out. The decision is final. We will, of course, pay out the remainder of your contract for this month. Karen has the paperwork. We'll need your keys and your faculty ID. It was a nightmare. I was numb. I was being replaced by a recent graduate. I was being fired instead of promoted. 10 years of loyalty, of late nights and skipped lunches, of pouring my heart into that place. And it was over in a 3-minute meeting. I stumbled out of his office, the official termination letter shaking in my hand. Karen was waiting at her desk, a small cardboard box next to her. She couldn't even look me in the eye as I dropped my keys. The key to my classroom, the key to the faculty lounge, the key to my life, into the box. I walked out of Clearview Academy for what I thought was the last time, the silence of the empty hall screaming at me. I spent the first 48 hours in a fog of disbelief and humiliation. My phone was blowing up. David had texted Thompson's office. 10 a.m. What's up? And then you okay? Heard a rumor. I ignored them all. How could I explain that I, the cornerstone of the department, had been tossed aside? My anger finally burned through the shock, fired for new energy. It didn't make sense. No school board in its right mind would fire a veteran teacher with a perfect record for an unknown new graduate. It was financially foolish. They'd have to pay more for someone with a master's in admin, and it was logistically chaotic. Who would run the newspaper, the debate club? I needed to know who she was. My social media avoidance ended. I went straight to the school's new updated website. I clicked on faculty, then English department, and there she was, Jessica Miller, head of English department. Her picture was bright, polished, and she looked impossibly young. She couldn't have been more than 24. Her bio was short, a proud graduate of a very expensive private university. Excited to bring innovative strategies to Clearview Academy. No mention of teaching experience, just a degree. I fell down a digital rabbit hole. Her public Instagram was a curated feed of boat parties, European vacations, and designer bags. This wasn't the profile of a young person passionate about public education. This was the profile of someone who had never had to work a day in her life. Then I found the connection, a tagged photo from 3 months prior, a charity gala. Jessica, smiling, arm in arm with her mother, and standing right next to them, smiling his same sharp, political smile, was Mr. Thompson. The caption, written by Jessica's mother, read, "So proud of my girl, and so wonderful to see Mr. Thompson, who is doing such amazing things at Clearview. We are so happy to be part of the Clearview family." My blood ran cold. I scrolled to the mother's profile. Her name was Diane Miller, and her bio, real estate developer and proud member of the Clearview Academy Board of Trustees. It wasn't a restructuring. It wasn't about new energy. It was nepotism, plain and simple. A board member had pulled strings to get her unqualified daughter a prestigious, high-paying job. But that still didn't explain why I had to be fired. They could have just hired her and not given me the promotion. Why get rid of me entirely? There had to be more to it. My 10 years of loyalty hadn't just been overlooked. They had been intentionally erased, and I was going to find out why. The nepotism was bad, but it wasn't the whole story. Firing a 10-year veteran teacher to make room for a board member's daughter was a messy, high-risk move. Thompson was a calculating man. He wouldn't do it unless there was another, more powerful incentive. I needed an ally on the inside. I finally called David. "Emily, thank God. I've been so worried. What on earth happened? One day you're getting promoted, the next you're gone, and this new girl, Jessica, she asked me where the library was. David, I need your help." I said, my voice low. I was fired. Thompson told me they were restructuring. But the girl who got my job, Jessica Miller. Her mother is Diane Miller, the one on the board. There was a long silence on the other end. "Oh," he said. "Oh no, Emily, that's bad. It's worse, David. Why fire me? Why not just hire her as a new teacher? Why did he have to get me out of the building? What am I a threat to?" He was hesitant. As a department head, he was part of Thompson's leadership team. "Look, Emily, I shouldn't be saying this, but things have been weird. Thompson's been pushing for a lot of new capital projects. A new digital scoreboard for the football field. A media innovation center that's just a room with new computers. The budget is tight, or so he says, but he's spending money like crazy. Where is the money coming from?" I asked. "That's the thing. A lot of it is coming from private donations and parent-led initiatives. and Diane Miller has been heading up the fundraising committee. My heart hammered in my chest. David, can you get me a copy of the recent budget proposals? Or the PTA meeting minutes? I can't, Em. It's all on the admin server, but Karen might be able to. She sees everything. Karen, of course. She had looked at me with pity. She knew. It took me a day to get the courage to call her. I wasn't asking her to just bend the rules. I was asking her to risk her job. I found her personal number through a mutual friend. Karen, it's Emily. Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for always being so kind. Her voice was soft. Emily, dear, what he did to you was a disgrace. Karen, I took a deep breath. I think something else is going on. Something with Thompson and Diane Miller. It's not just about her daughter. I think it's about money. There was a pause. Mr. Thompson has been having a lot of closed-door meetings with Mrs. Miller, she said carefully, and with contractors. The invoices he's been approving, some of them don't look right. He told me to file them under Special Projects Fund, a fund I've never even heard of until 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I whispered. That's when he promised me the promotion. Yes, she said, he's very particular about those files, keeps them locked in his office. Not on the main server. He was sloppy. He had promised me the head of department role, a role that would have given me a seat on the budget committee. He couldn't risk me seeing those special projects invoices. He couldn't have me in the room asking questions about why we were buying a $50,000 scoreboard while the English department was using textbooks from 2005. It wasn't just nepotism, it was embezzlement. He and Diane Miller were likely laundering donation money through the school, approving inflated invoices from her developer friends and taking a cut. And I, the dedicated the book teacher, was the one person who would have noticed. I wasn't just fired to make room for Jessica. I was fired to silence a witness. I had the why. Now I needed the what. What was I going to do? I couldn't go to the school board. Diane Miller would shut me down. I couldn't go to the police, not yet. I had no hard proof, just the word of a nervous science teacher and a terrified secretary. Thompson and Miller would paint me as a disgruntled employee, a bitter woman out for revenge. They were half right. I was bitter, and I was out for revenge, but I was also going to do intelligently. Thompson had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated the one group more powerful than the board, the parents, specifically the Clearview PTA. The Clearview PTA was a force of nature, run by a committee of highly organized, deeply involved mothers who fundraised hundreds of thousands of dollars for the school every year. They were the ones who paid for the new library books, the art supplies, and the buses for field trips, and they were notoriously protective of how their money was spent. I couldn't be the source. It had to be anonymous. I spent a week gathering digital whispers. I found the public-facing building permits for the new media center and compared them to the average cost. The price was inflated by at least 40%. I found the website for the construction company awarded the bid. Its mailing address was the same as Diane Miller's real estate office. I created a new anonymous email address. I drafted a message posing as a concerned faculty member who feared retaliation. I kept it simple, just planting questions. To the Clearview PTA Executive Committee. It began, I am writing out of a deep love for this school. I am concerned about recent spending decisions. Can you please ask Mr. Thompson why the Special Projects Fund is not detailed in the public budget? Can you ask why the bid for the new media center went to a company with ties to a board member at a cost nearly double the market rate? And can you ask why a 10-year veteran teacher was abruptly fired to make room for that same board member's unqualified daughter, all while our English students are using 15-year-old textbooks? I attached the links to the building permits, the company's address, and a screenshot of Jessica's gloating Instagram post about her new corner office. I sent the email to the PTA president, the vice president, and the treasurer, and then I waited. It took less than 24 hours. David texted me. Emily, what did you do? The PTA president just stormed into the office. I've never seen Thompson look so pale. They're calling an emergency parent meeting tonight. The seeds hadn't just been planted. They had exploded. The school auditorium was packed. I had never seen it so full, not even for the Christmas pageant. Parents, teachers, and even some local news reporters were there, all drawn by the PTA emergency email, which had forwarded my anonymous questions to the entire parent body. I stood in the back, my hoodie pulled up, just another face in the shadows. I needed to see this. The PTA president, a sharp-eyed lawyer named Mrs. Henderson, was at the podium. Thompson and Diane Miller were seated on the stage, visibly tense. They had clearly underestimated the speed and fury of the parents. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Henderson said, her voice amplified by the microphone, cutting through the murmurs. We have called this meeting to address serious concerns about fiscal transparency and hiring practices at Clearview Academy. She was brilliant. She didn't accuse. She just asked the questions from my email one by one. Mr. Thompson, can you explain the Special Projects Fund to us? Parents who raised this money deserve to know where it is. Thompson stood, his fake smile plastered on. It's a discretionary fund for school improvement, all very standard. Then you won't mind providing the invoices. She countered specifically for the $50,000 scoreboard and the $150,000 media center. We'd also like to see the other bids for that project, or was there only one bid? The color drained from Thompson's face. Diane Miller started to say something, but Mrs. Henderson turned to her. And Mrs. Miller, we are so impressed with your daughter's recent hiring as head of the English department. What a coup for a recent graduate. Could you perhaps share with us her teaching resume? The parents of our advanced placement students are very curious about her experience. The room erupted. Parents were shouting, "My kid's in that class. What experience!" Diane Miller, arrogant and accustomed to power, made a fatal error. She grabbed the mic. My daughter is eminently qualified, and how this board and how Mr. Thompson choose to run this school is not the business of a parent bake sale committee. The collective gasp in the room was deafening. Calling the PTA bake sale committee was the final nail in her coffin. Then a quiet voice came from the side. Karen, the secretary, was walking toward the stage, holding a file. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "But when you were terminated by the board president this afternoon, she asked me to secure all financial documents. I believe this is the special projects file you asked me about. I hadn't even known." The board, seeing the tidal wave of parent fury and likely a few reporters, had cut their losses. They had fired Thompson and Miller before the meeting even started. This was just the public execution. Karen handed the file to Mrs. Henderson, who opened it. She didn't even have to look for long. "Well," she said, holding up a single invoice, "this is very interesting. An invoice for administrative consulting for $20,000, paid directly to Miller Development. It was over." Thompson was escorted out by a security guard. Diane Miller fled the stage, followed by the flashbulbs of the local press. The parents were cheering, and in the chaos, Karen looked toward the back of the auditorium and met my eyes. She gave me a single, respectful nod. I had taught my final lesson at Clearview Academy. Never, ever underestimate a person with nothing left to lose. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The story was all over the local news. School embezzlement scandal. A board member resigns in disgrace. An audit revealed that Thompson and Miller had funneled nearly $200,000 of school funds into their own pockets. Jessica, humiliated, had resigned before her first day. 2 weeks after the meeting, I got a call from Mrs. Henderson, who had been appointed the interim head of the school board. "Emily," she said, her voice warm, "first, on behalf of every parent at Clearview, I want to apologize. What was done to you is unconscionable. We are cleaning house, I promise you." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I appreciate that. We would like to formally offer you your job back," she said, "not just as a teacher, as the head of the English department, with a pay raise and, frankly, anything else you want. You saved this school." I held the phone, looking around my small apartment. 10 years of my life, 10 years of loyalty, all for a place that had thrown me away the second I became inconvenient. They were offering me everything I had ever wanted. "No," I said, and the word felt powerful. There was a silence. I understand," she said, disappointment in her voice. "I saved the school." I said, "But the trust is broken. I can't go back. I need to build something new." It was the hardest and easiest decision I had ever made. My story had spread through the county. The superintendent of the neighboring district, a larger, better funded, and highly respected school system, had read about me. He called me in for an interview. It wasn't for a teaching job. It was for the newly created position of district curriculum coordinator, overseeing the English programs for all 5 high schools. Today, I'm Emily, 31, female. I'm sitting in my new, spacious office. My nameplate, a gift from David, who is now the interim principal at Clearview, sits on my desk. I have a view of a beautiful campus, and I'm currently drafting a new digital literacy program for 500 students. I got my promotion. It just wasn't at the place I thought. I lost my job, but I found my worth. I learned that loyalty is a two-way street, and sometimes the most important lesson you can teach is how to stand up for yourself.